I am your host, Savannah Burks, and we have our special guest, Mr. Dr. Ray, in the building today. How are you?
Spectacular.
Thank you so much for taking out time of your busy day to be on the Lupus Has No Face platform. We really actually appreciated that because we know how busy you are.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate to get this information out, and it's so important because it can really transform people's lives in a major way once they understand that there's what can be done with lupus and autoimmune challenges.
I'm for sure. So, Dr. Ray, for the people that do not know you, my audience have never met you before, can you tell them who you are and what led you into functional wellness?
Sure, and I've been in practice for over 43 years. And I'm based in Pittsburgh. I run I'm a chiropractor of a wellness and a weight loss. The operation of basically we go all over the world with that, which is Weight Loss Direct, which is really what got me into this. Is so about 12 years ago, I created a very personalized metabolic weight loss program. So it affects metabolic pathways, and so we had patients come in that were, they're trying to lose weight, but during that process, what we noticed was that they were mentioning things like my rheumatoid arthritis is better, my psoriasis clears up, I haven't had a lupus flare since I started, and what happened? It was one person in particular, and she actually did have lupus. The first one, Maria, is what and when she came into the office, I mean, her ankles were swollen. She had the rash on her face. She had no energy. She couldn't play with her kids. Here she is. She's in her early 40s and just really having a lot of struggle. And when she came in, that almost completely disappeared. And in fact, she came in and said, "You cured my lupus." And I'm like, "Well, I'm sure that didn't. It's not cured, but I'm glad you had this kind of result." And you start to think, is it a coincidence at that point? Well, she started referring other patients with lupus. She was in a support group, but it was other autoimmune challenges. Those patients that came in, they all had the same result. And the challenge was that she went through the program and she didn't gain any weight back, yet her symptoms were coming back. So at that point, I knew that we had found something and that was affecting it. But what was it so that we can target that and continue that and not have these symptoms come back? And so I just went into tremendous research on the subject and just research after research. And then it was October 6th of 2025 when the Nobel Prize was awarded for the FOXP3 gene as being the core driver of all autoimmune challenges, including lupus. And it hit me because I knew what we were doing in the program. I had actually been looking at FOXP3, the Tregs, and when the Nobel Prize gave that, they basically said this is it. And the Nobel Prize, you have to remember, that's not given for fringe science. That is something that is reproducible. It's at the epitome. That's the highest level of validation. And so at that point, I had spent so much time understanding this that it was pretty easy for me to just start saying, okay, now I know what we need to target in the program. Now I know what we need to change. I knew the supplements. I knew exactly why that happened. So I had accidentally stumbled on this entire process. And the thing about autoimmune challenges in FOXP3 in particular is that it is a non-druggable target. That's what Mary Brunko, one of the 3 Nobel laureates, stated, that it is because of where it's located on the X chromosome in the nucleus, in the region that it is a non-druggable target. And the only thing that affects it are metabolic pathways. And that's what we were doing. So, and that's what started the FOXP3 protocol that we just developed from that, and it's been fantastic ever since that.
And as I can see, and the audience can see how just excited it makes you to even talk about this. So we want to take it back just a little bit so they can understand just a little bit more. Your work became personal after watching your wife struggle with autoimmune disease. Can you share that journey and how it changed your life forever?
Oh, absolutely. And it wasn't so. My wife has, and once you have one autoimmune challenge, uh, so often you end up with others. And the reason is it's the same core driver. And that's why you'll have people with lupus, with Hashimoto's, with Sjogren's, with psoriasis. You get multiple conditions. She had a palindromic rheumatism, which is causes like swelling in the joints. So it'll be like one joint and then it'll be it's a really strange condition because it's palindromic that you get it the exact same on the other on the right and the left, and you see this where she wasn't able to, you're not able to do different things, you're not able to function, and then the started with skin just swelling. There's so many different challenges with that. My mother was diagnosed with lupus. She had some challenges with that fluid around her heart due to it, but she, fortunately for her, she never really had it. She was diagnosed with that, but wasn't really as serious as a lot of patients with lupus.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people, and you can relate to this. People who are listening to this, so often the blood, you're looking at the blood work and you have multiple confusing things. So is it seronegative, like the thing that a particular antibody that you would expect to be positive is negative, and you're getting all these symptoms, and no one can name what it is. And the challenge with that is it's not about naming what it is. It's about seeing what's happening, and there is an immune dysregulation within the body, and you need to get back regulation of the immune system. But but you're exactly right. It wasn't just scientific. It wasn't clinical. It becomes personal when someone that you love, you wake up and you see that person suffering, and you say there has to be an answer. And knowing the conventional medicine really doesn't have much, because all they keep doing is trying to say you need to manage it. You're going to have this the rest of your life. We need to manage it and prevent other things from happening. We prevent like a lupus nephritis, to prevent. We want to manage the different control that there's not more organ damage, and that's really not an answer. The answer is what's causing this, and everybody knows deep down. They say there's something that's driving this, and you know it. There has to be something that can be done. And now that we know what the core driver is, then we can do something. And the reason why you're not, this just won the Nobel Prize, and it was 2 Americans and 1 Japanese individual. And you would think that, you have 2 Americans won the most prestigious award in science for the core driver of autoimmune challenges. And you hardly hear anything about it. And the reason is because there isn't a medication. You have to use lifestyle. You have to use food modification. You have to affect metabolic pathways. And that's where we step in. You're able to do that. And that's the hope of this, that there's something that you can do, because so many people, they think that they're just, the victim. And it's like, is there anything that I can do? And that's where, and we look at all these challenges, and they start looking at the organ that's involved. And think of it this way. I look at it as, if you had a home and there was an invader trying to and they break into your home, and you have a security team that's supposed to be protecting your home, say, and they break in, we blame the home. In other words, you look at, if it's Hashimoto's, you look at the thyroid, or you're looking at the kidney, or you're looking at the skin, like you're looking at the organ that was involved, and sort of blaming that, saying that that's been weakened, or there's something going on there, instead of, hey, there's a security team that's your immune system, and something broke down there, and that allowed that to occur. And that's really what happens in your immune system. That's the way it works. You have a peacekeeping group that is preventing. It says, hey, if there's something, and that's what the FOXP3 gene does. It creates something called the Tregs, or regulatory T cells. So you have T cells whose job it is to attack, and what they're doing is they attack your healthy tissue in an autoimmune condition, and your regulatory T cells, their job is to patrol and say, wait a second, they keep peace. They're called the peacekeepers. And they say, this is healthy tissue, don't go there. Or you've already done what you need to do. You've eliminated the antigen. It's time to, or the pathogen, whatever, and it's time to stand down. You don't have to keep going in this fight. And that's where FOXP3 comes in. And the problem is when it's unstable, your body's not making these regulatory T cells, and it just keeps attacking, and it keeps and it's attacking areas that it shouldn't be attacking. And that's really what the real challenge is on all this.
So, with that being said, the patients that you see, do you think they're the reason why there is a gap because people like yourself, right, and other physicians, you guys don't communicate effectively with the patient that's at hand? So, what I'm saying is, like, the rheumatologist, and you guys are doing this amazing thing that can cure a lot of things, but the rheumatologists don't have conversations with important guys like you to work together to help the patient to get this type of information.
Well, I think that's part of it. So here's what it is. The medical field, basically, once you graduate, you're getting your education from pharmaceutical companies, because you're doing what you learned to do. And even if you go to a seminar, those seminars are sponsored by pharmaceutical companies. So you're only learning what there's a drug for. If there's not a drug for it, you're not going to learn it. But what's interesting with this is the Nobel Prize on what's happening with this. So if you talk to, and I'll tell you, I talked to one group, an autoimmune group, and they said they were shocked because they said they've never heard this. They were executives with the group, and they're like, I've never heard of FOXP3. And what they did was they contacted their medical advisory group, and they said, yeah, that's, there's a lot of hope for this in the future. It's probably 10 to 15 years out, though, minimum. And again, what's 10 to 15 years out? 10 to 15 years out is the drug. Now, the thing about this is this is not alternative to anything that you're doing. This is additive. So it's the same way. If you went to, if you injure your knee and you go to an orthopedist, they're doing their thing. And what they do, then they send you to a physical therapist, and you're doing therapy while you're still healing. And you can, whatever else you're doing, you can still do diet. If you have a blocked artery in your heart, you're going to your heart doctor, and they may do a bypass surgery. They don't say, don't touch don't change your diet. They know that your diet got you there in the first place.
Yeah.
And this is similar. There's something that broke down that caused this. And what we are doing is we're saying, okay, let's address that. Let's address what got you there in the first place. And you can be doing whatever you're doing, whatever medications that you're on, if you're on a biologic, you're on a biologic. If you're on an immunosuppressant, you're on that immunosuppressant. But at the same time, you can be doing lifestyle modifications. You can be changing your diet. You can be changing food timing, protocols. There's so many different things that affect this. There's nutritional supplementation that very directly affects your FOXP3. And so all we want to do is we want to stabilize this gene called FOXP3, and have your body produce at a higher amount these regulatory T cells. See, I'll tell you, Savannah, this is interesting. So when they were researching this, what they thought was the same as what we've learned for so long, and that is that the body was overstimulated. It's attacking itself. Okay, and so they looked at the worst condition that there is, an autoimmune. It's called IPEX. It's the little boys get it, and they typically die within the first few years of life. And essentially, they get almost every autoimmune disease simultaneously. That's essentially what happens. And so they wanted to see how overstimulated is their immune system. And what they found out was that it wasn't overstimulated at all, that it's the same as everybody else's. The difference was it just didn't stop. So if it needed to react, it reacted the same. It didn't act like that much higher or more or faster or stronger. It was the same, but it didn't stop. And it would attack the healthy tissue, and when it should stand down, it didn't stand down. It just continued.
Mm.
And so then they said so that Royce took off the one thing right from the beginning, that it's an overstimulated nerve system. And then originally the first person they discovered was the regulatory T cells, and that was Shimon Sakaguchi, the Japanese researcher. And then it was several years later that I think it was like 7 years later that Mary Bronco and Fred Ramsdell discovered FOXP3 that actually controls that. And then it was after that that they realized what all this was for and how it affects your immune system. And it's immune regulation. And it's really not even just autoimmune. If it's a dysregulated immune system, things like long COVID, chronic Lyme disease, even perimenopause and menopausal symptoms are affected by a breakdown in the regulatory system of the immune system. So that's what this is, and that's the power of this. That when you can balance it, and that's the hope that I want to give people. That all this other stuff, you're looking at it downstream, and that's why even antibodies that aren't supposed to be able to be affected, they are once you start to balance and stabilize FOXP3, which is further upstream from all these other things that are going on.
With that being said, was there a specific moment when you realized conventional answers wasn't enough?
Oh my! And I've known this for so long. It's because I just look at it's always about getting to the cause of the problem,
Yeah.
and I look at medicine has always been looking at the effects. Okay, and it's great for emergency medicine. It is great for keeping somebody alive that has a really a critical condition. But when it comes to wellness, it is not. It's about the worst. In fact, if that was the case, if medications were the case, then it would be the person who has to take the most medications would be the healthiest. And it's just the opposite. If you're healthy, you don't have to take any medications. And I realize that we know that there's an intelligence within this body that knows how to run the body, knows how to run your heart, your liver, your kidneys, your spleen, every function of your body. And as long as so a balanced body is always going to be better than an imbalanced body, right? You're going to be, and that's been as a chiropractor, I look at, you're always going to be better with pressure off nerves than on nerves. And so from the very beginning, like as long as I can remember, I've always had that thought process. I think differently, and I'm always looking to go back to the cause, and that's really that's what it is, and I think that's what has made it. When I'm looking at a patient, I'm always trying to say, what's causing it, and what can we do to get to the cause of that? And so it's not just about managing it. And really, that's what medicine is. And by the way, even with like autoimmune, think of this as some of these stats that adolescent autoimmune conditions has gone up recently 3 times. We're talking about 3 times what it's been. So we just keep getting worse and worse. And even though we have drugs to keep us alive and to do these things, we are getting more chronic illness than at any time in history. And people just aren't well. They don't have energy. They just don't feel themselves. And they know that there's something else out there. They know that something's going on. And that's where we can do it. And that's where, that's why I see my job as. And I'm just getting the information out. What happens is the body is so robust. This body it was designed it has this perfect intelligence. It knows how to run it, that when you give it what it needs, it can dramatically change. So you can dramatically transform wherever you're at. And like I said, it is the greatest thing about this is you don't have to say, oh, take a leap. Well, do I stop taking my medication and do this? No, whatever you're doing, whatever you're monitoring, you monitor. And when you start doing this, you see how your body just starts to transform. And people report that they've doing the best that they've ever done, and because we're supporting the body, and that's really what it is. Think of it like, and this is what the Nobel laureates described it. They said the immune system is like an orchestra, with every section has its own job. So you have the strings, the brass, the percussion, and normally the conductor is keeping everyone in time. They're keeping everyone in tune. And with lupus and with other autoimmune conditions, the conductor basically has stepped off the stage. So now your immune orchestra, it's still playing, but now every section is doing its own thing, and you have chaos. And they're getting louder, they're getting faster, and the chaos is attacking your joints, your kidneys, your skin. And FOXP3 is that conductor. Specifically, it's the gene that controls that special group of immune cells called regulatory T cells. And their entire job is to keep the rest of the immune system from attacking the body. So when FOXP3 is unstable, your regulatory T cells can't do their job. And when they can't do their job, the immune system, they don't have the peacekeepers I talked about. So that's when you get lupus. That's rheumatoid arthritis. That's Hashimoto. So we call it a unified mechanism with divergent expressions. In other words, there's one cause, and depending on, there's different genetic predispositions. There's 14 different pathways that have been identified to destabilize FOXP3. And depending what you have, then that's where that attacks. And that's what the Nobel Prize showed us, is that FOXP3 expression, how well that gene functions, is highly sensitive to metabolic signals, and including nutritional signals. And like I said, food is molecules. They're signaling molecules, and they signal these metabolic pathways. So what you eat is literally talking to the gene.
So, okay. So with that being said, we're going to move on to the turning point, right? So you
Okay.
often say your perspective on autoimmune disease completely changed. What was the breakthrough that shifted your thinking process?
Well, it wasn't that it changed for me. Like, I knew that there's something going on, but what it was when I could see from what was happening with our weight loss patients, and I tried other things, like, because I knew there were certain things that when we did that, they dramatically improved. And it was what was happening. And it was really that Nobel Prize, when they got the award for FOXP3 and regulatory T cells, at that point, I knew what the mechanism was now that governed this whole thing. And I realized, because I knew that one of the things that I did with our metabolic, and we used a very precision metabolic weight loss program with personalized nutritional supplements, personalized foods, and it was affecting the one pathway in particular, the AMPK pathway, is directly involved with FOXP3. So I knew exactly what that was. There was a certain phase that affected that. So then from that point, target that, because now that I know what we needed targeted, I knew how to target it with nutrition. And the problem was there wasn't nutritional supplements that were there's some things that can help that, but what we did was I've created formulations that were specifically designed to stabilize FOXP3. We came up with different protocols and food timings. It was specifically designed to affect FOXP3, and there's a cycle with that. So the regulatory T cells, they're different when they are maturing, when they're growing from a naive T cell Treg to a mature Treg is different after it matures. And so, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example of that. In the early stage, we do not support, like everybody talks about supporting mitochondria. It's because and by the way, the Tregs use so much energy from the mitochondria, but only when they're mature. They even use a different form of energy. They use fatty acid oxidation while they're growing, and then use more ATP from the mitochondria when they're mature. So it's different in different phases. So you have to go. So we have a 5-phase protocol that's built
What are those
totally around
phases?
this whole process.
What are those 5 phases?
So the first phase is very short, and it's just sort of preparatory that gets you on. Then in phase 2, that's where we really get you into where it's about stabilizing FOXP3. It's about improving the Tregs. So we're creating more Tregs, creating stabilizing this FOXP3, and that's where we call FOXP3 induction. All right, and then the third phase 3 is where we test autonomy. And what I mean by that is we've been supporting FOXP3. We're going to take away some of that support, and we see, does it hold, or do symptoms come back? If the symptoms return, we'll extend that a little bit longer. If it doesn't, then we know that we can move on. So that's a little bit of a transition and a bridge to phase 4. Phase 4 is rebuilding, and that's with now the Tregs are more mature. We're affecting a different area of the microbiome. So we affect the microbiome. The gut bacteria is different in phase 2. For instance, we're looking to for integrity of the gut lining, for like leaky gut, and then when we get into phase 4, it's about producing more butyrate. It's about probiotics that will help produce more butyrate, because butyrate is very helpful to stabilize FOXP3. And we want to build mitochondria. So we want more mitochondria. We want healthier mitochondria in phase 4. And in phase 5 is we're starting to transition into just getting into more daily life. So it was more strict in phase 2. Each phase gets a little bit less strict as far as what you do, and you start to add in foods that you weren't permitted in other phases, and then you start to add those in, and that's really what so you're just building this, and you're totally transforming your body. Now you free it up in phase 5. You're going back to maybe not quite 100% where you were beforehand. There might be some foods that you learned that you shouldn't eat those because when you bring those in, it has an effect on your body. You can start to become really attuned to your body, by the way. You know that because you feel good. Like when people start the program, that's one of the biggest things. They'll say, their energy level is going up. Their inflammation is down. They notice inflammation very rapidly. You can check the markers for inflammation, whether it's HSCRP or ESR and things like that, ferritin. And by the way, any of those markers that you would normally check, you just continue to check those while you're doing the program, and you're looking for those to improve. And by the way, even some antibodies where they say they do not go down, they do. If you can affect the upstream that's causing those, then you don't have those antibodies like that anymore. So they can be affected dramatically.
So before we move on to the next question, if the people that's watching this and if they were interested in learning how to start up or where to start, um, where should they go to?
They can go to drraywellness.com. That's DRRAY wellness.com. And I actually have, if you go slash lupus, drraywellness.com/lupus, I have a webinar on there. I have a page that talks about lupus in particular. And we dive into this because, like I said, FOXP3 wasn't a pharmaceutical discovery. It is a fundamental biological discovery about the immune system and how it's supposed to be regulated and how it regulates itself. And I go through that. I go through some of the stats, the research. But, like I said, people say, typically the first thing is, well, is there research on this? You can't get any higher research than the Nobel Prize. You have one given in the entire world for all research that's going on. And they said, and by the way, the people who put that out said that this may have been one of the biggest discoveries in 80 years. So you have to say, that's how big it is. I mean, it's validated decades of clinical observation and caused some, and now allows us to be able to do something really amazing. And that's what it's about, giving hope.
You start asking you questions.
Yes.
It don't get no higher than that. They're not
No.
just those things out, right?
That's right. That's right.
You mentioned over 12 years of unexpected patient recoveries. What patterns
Right.
were you seeing that challenged traditional beliefs?
Oh, that's, what, almost everything, because of the fact that things that they'll tell you, once you have an ANA test, once you have a TPO for Hashimoto's, some of these, they don't change. They never change afterwards. The antibody test, and what you see is they are change. They do change. You see people dramatically, just very unexpected results, and it wasn't. And for me, it was. I mean, we were doing a personalized metabolic weight loss program that has supported various pathways, and we knew the pathways that we wanted to support. That was our whole purpose. And so every protocol was personalized, and for everyone, they were getting these amazing results. And that's the thing I want to say too. What works for one person may not be exactly what works for someone else, and that's why there's not a one size fits all food list. Like I said earlier, I said that food is made of molecules. Molecules they're signaling molecules for metabolic pathways. Just like every drug, there's a different drug has a different effect. Different molecules within each food has a different effect. And that's why you'll see the breakdown of food. They'll say that it has this vitamin and this mineral and this micronutrient. And so we're looking at your macronutrients, micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, essential fatty acids, amino acids, how it affects your hormones, your neurotransmitters, your metabolic pathways. And when you do that, that changes. And so, the way I look at it is I always had the belief that there's always a cause. And you always have to get to the cause. It's understanding what is that. Even when I did a radio station with call-in questions for almost 20 years, and people would call in with diseases that would be like no one's ever heard of. There might be like 5 ever, and someone would call in with something and say, "Do you know what this is?" And I said, "I know exactly what it is." And they said, "How come you do and no one else does?" And they said, "What is it?" I said, "It's a body that's not functioning properly." That's what they all come down to. That's what I said. It's not. What we need to do is figure out what's going on, and what do we need to do to get it to function properly. But your body is so robust and so powerful that when you give it the right support, that's when miracles happen. And it's not because if you cut your hand, you can sew it, patch it, put an antibiotic on, you can do anything you want. None of that heals it. The only thing that heals it is when your body creates new cells, new life. That's the miracle. That's the miracle of life. It's the miracle of how your body heals. And that's what the body already has that inside it. I mean, it has an immune system that is so powerful. I mean, you have all of these different immune cells that do all different things, and it's coordinated. Well, what we find out is that FOXP3 is the main regulatory mechanism for all of this. And that's really what it comes down to. And what happened is patients were stunned, rheumatologists were stunned. You see like I said, energy returns to normal, swelling that made somebody unrecognizable almost was gone. And I had people coming in with tears in their eyes with gratitude this time, not despair, saying, this is just amazing. And like I said, they thought that some of them thought their conditions were cured. And I said, that's not the word I would use. But what happened is that we created a metabolic condition that allowed the regulatory T cells to function. And our body did what it was designed to do when it's given that right environment. And how many people think of this? You go to your doctor. Have they ever sat down with you and gone through, like, how do you change your metabolic pathways? How do you support yourself? And you can continue to do everything what they're doing. So they're using the tools in their toolbox. They don't have this tool, and it's not against them. They're using, they only want the best for you. So I'm not speaking negative about it. I work with the rheumatologist. I'll work with the endocrinologist. I'll work with, the dermatologist, whatever that condition is.
I love how you add things, because if you really look at it, that's anything in life, right? So people that operate out of trauma for something that happened in their childhood life versus their adult life, you got to go to the root of the problem. So the difference is that they are masking things, putting makeup on top of the scar and just keeping it tame, versus you guys are going to the root of the problem. You're going to where it started, how it started, why it started, and then you're building it all back up. So I love it. That logic is for anything in life.
You're 100% right. That's totally true. And I should say that it's this. Not every patient has a response like Maria, for instance. Some take longer. Some have accumulated damage that is going to limit your recovery. I mean, if you have so much damage, and there's medications and medicines that can be life-saving, but the thing is, it's like you can put a crutch on, you can be on crutches, but you're not supposed to go on crutches your entire life. You want to heal what's being done, and you heal that, and you can get off those crutches. And that should be the goal. And so what I can tell you is that the conventional story that lupus is incurable and requires lifelong immune suppression, that is based on incomplete science. All right. And that's the one thing that I want everybody to understand, that's incomplete, that your food is able to have a profound effect. When I say food, we use whole food nutrition that's designed specifically. And I think to my knowledge, I'm the only one that's done this, to created nutritional products. They're designed specifically to help stabilize FOXP3 and to support that. So my whole job is to support that, so that those molecules, whether it be in the food, whether it be in the nutritional supplements, help modify your biology in real time to help change your gene expression, to help change your epigenome, to help regulate your immune system, to help regulate your hormones. It affects your brain chemistry. So, like I said, just like pharmacology, they don't give one drug for every disease, and there's not one diet or one approach to every problem. And so when people think that, hey, I'm eating a healthy diet and the food is healthy, or this food makes you sick, they don't realize it goes a lot deeper than that. And that's where I come in.
So we're going to move on to understanding autoimmune diseases, right? So many people are
Yes.
told their immune system is overactive, like we was talking about in the beginning. Why do you believe that's an incomplete explanation? Like, where did that come from?
Well, it's always been thought that because they see this attack is going on, and they know that there's an attack of it's interesting because lupus can attack multiple conditions. Most autoimmune is one type of tissue, like Hashimoto's has got to do your the thyroid and psoriasis, the skin, rheumatoid arthritis, the synovium. But when you look at lupus, it's a little bit different, but what they would see is the attack that's going on. And so they just keep seeing the attack. But what they don't realize is the attack it's not that it's stronger or more so than what any other attack would be. It's that it keeps going and it's attacking things that it wasn't supposed to, because there were cells that are sort of standing up there and saying, no, you don't go here. And they're like, by the way, the regulatory T cells are a form of T cells. They've been converted to they've been sort of like deputized to be the police force. And this police force goes through and it patrols and it says, that's healthy tissue, don't attack that. And the body gets tricked. There's things called molecular mimicry. What that is there's viruses that have proteins on them that are similar to proteins in our own body, for instance. And so it learns to fight those proteins, attack those proteins. And it's similar enough to another type of protein in our body that it attacks that instead. So it's learned to do that. And it can go a lot deeper than that, because there's actually like a factory of the B cells that actually make these antibodies to attack that, and that can mess up. And you have a sort of like an internal affair audit department that's also controlled by your FOXP3, that when they make those antibodies to say, wait, this one, it's not exact, and it can attack your healthy tissue. So it's really interesting how the whole immune system, it's really amazing. And it's amazing that I look at the miracle of the body, but it's so amazing that's what gives people so much hope, because when it's functioning properly, it's incredible. And it's only when something goes wrong and it's dysregulated. And what medicine does is it affects the cause. And it's sort of like playing whack-a-mole. You help one thing here and you can have something else going on. It's even like you can even remove an organ. You can still have the antibodies that are attacking those structures, and you'll still have those antibodies go up, and they're still making those antibodies for that, even though that organ has been removed, for instance. But when you stabilize what the core driver of this, that can stop. And so that's what we do, is we support that.
Okay. How does immune regulation differ from immune suppression?
Well, it's totally different. So the one, immune regulation is going to the cause, and we're saying, hey, what's controlling all this, and let's get it regulated. Immune suppression is just saying, hey, we think it's too much attack. We want to stop the attack, so we're going to suppress that. But once you suppress that, you don't suppress one area. You don't suppress in one location. You don't suppress to one organ. You're suppressing everything. And when you suppress that, that's why all these medications have the toxic side effects that they do, because of the fact that they're suppressing everything. And that's the key to this whole thing. And by the way, we should have known that it was that this was all from basically a gene driving it, and we should have known that it was on the X chromosome, because women get it so much more than men. And that's what I wrote a book, FOXP3 Protocol for Women. By the way, in September, I have the FOXP3 Protocol coming out just in time for the 1-year anniversary for the Nobel Prize on this. And because what happened was the reason why women have it so much more in lupus, it can be up to 14 times higher than men.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm sure you know that and black women have it, and women of color about 3 times more than white women.
Yeah.
So it's and you start to look at you know some of those stats are, by the way, are really just crazy. And we can go into that sometime. But it's what happened was, since with the worst condition I told you about earlier, IPEX,
Yeah.
and I said made it. I said it's a little boys that died, and it's like why not girls? And it's little boys because there's an X and a Y. It sits on the X chromosome. Boys only have one X chromosome, so when it goes, it they have no backup. Women have a backup. They have two X chromosomes. But the problem with that is they have two different, they're not identical. And you have two different messages going out to your immune system. So if you two different command control centers going out to your immune system. And there's a process called X inactivation that the body tries to silence one of those. So you only have one that's in charge and not the other one. But you don't it doesn't happen exactly, and it doesn't happen in all the cells. So you have some cells that are using the one X chromosome, and some cells using another X chromosome, and so you have two different systems, and that's where it becomes a little bit unstable. And but there's usually something else that's destabilizes that. It might be, hear people
Mhm.
say, ever since I had this infection, I had a bad infection, and then I ended up with an autoimmune. It was after the birth of my second child, I got an autoimmune disease. It's there after a death in the family, the death of a loved one, because something happens, it weakens it, and then it's usually the second hit takes that out, and it really knocks it out. And that's why I say it's typically the two hits that knock that out, and sometimes even more than that. And and so we know that they've identified 14 destabilizing destabilizers of FOXP3,
Yeah.
and different conditions are affected more because of the pathways that are involved. And that's what I study. That's what I do. And that's why it's different for each person, and everyone's individualized, and you create the program for that person. And now with we use AI because we're looking at different metabolic pathways,
Mhm.
and our protocols. I think it's second to none. I mean, like I said, results vary by for everyone. And I have to say that, and we're supporting FOXP3, but it's just like saying, if you have a person that has heart problems, you don't want them to continue to eat the junk that caused that in the first place. So something caused FOXP3 to go out. We need to build that up. So we need to do everything we can that's going to stabilize FOXP3. So whatever else you're doing, stabilize FOXP3. Let's get your regulatory T cells functioning, and I think you'll find that it makes just a huge difference.
Before we move on to nutrition and healing, why do you think that they missed the why when it comes to the chromosomes on the man and the woman? All of these studies, like, why do you think they missed something like that? The why?
Um, well, they're always like looking, and it was interesting with you. I heard Doctors Bronco and Ramsdale speak about. They said that there was, and you can look it all up. How there was something called the scurfy mice. That's how they discovered this, and it was they removed these the regulatory T cells. They really found out that it was this regulatory T cell. That's how they identified it. That when they removed these T cells, the mice instantly um, got autoimmune disease. Like they were just completely had these autoimmune disease. And then as they would try to put these regulatory T cells that they removed back into the mice, it would go away. And so they knew that there was something with these regulatory T cells. And so the next thing was what controlled that. And then they did identify that it was a gene, and then they narrowed it down to 25 different genes. And it just takes, I mean, this stuff takes some time. And it happened to be the last gene that they looked at. And it was interesting because, they make educated guesses, and they said, hey, we think it's these five. It's one of these five. Of the 25, it's one of these five. And they looked at those five, and it wasn't those five. And then they went down, and it ended up being the last one. But the one person made an interesting statement. They said, well, one of the reasons why it was one of the last ones that we looked at is because we were hoping that it wasn't that one, because it was a non-druggable target. It was in one of the most difficult to affect with a medication. By the way, all these research studies are all by drug companies. So they work for pharmaceutical companies. And so they found it's like you find the cause, and it's like, oh man, it's an area that we can't even affect with a medication. And that's really why you don't hear too much about it, in my opinion.
Interesting. Okay, so nutrition and healing, right? You talked about nutritional immune regulation. What exactly does that mean for the people that's watching?
So nutrition, like I said, all food is food molecules, and those molecules affect those signals. And so we can look at different signals, and some of them are very simple, like that are well known. In fact, one for lupus, it's well known, is the VDR, which is the vitamin D nuclear receptor. People that have low vitamin D, that's going to be a challenge, and they need to keep vitamin D high. When vitamin D goes low, then especially with lupus, and with lupus again, there's different genetic markers like your HLA DR2, HLA DR3. There's the STAT4. You have a whole list of HLA DQ series. I think it's DQ2. So that means that you have a genetic predisposition to some extent. But lots of people have HLA DR2, for instance. All right, they have this abnormality, but they don't have lupus. Something else has to happen in addition to that. And that's usually and that's something is it destabilizes the FOXP3. Well, if you have a selenium deficiency, for instance, that is a known major destabilizer of FOXP3. Vitamin D, if it's low, that's a major destabilizer of FOXP3. So there are foods that and same with like even herbs and stuff. Like rhodiola is a great herb, but it's not good, particularly with most autoimmune. Like there's things that are not as that are great nutrients, but they're not really spectacular with this. We would want to avoid those, and you have to understand the pathway. See, that was the big thing. When I realized that it was FOXP3, then that dictates, what I need to do nutritionally, what I need to do as far as food timing goes. And then you have to go with we have it in phases, because there's the life cycle of the Treg, of a developing Treg, the regulatory T cell. And like I said, it's totally different in phase 2 as it is in phase 4, because one is a naive cell that's growing, and it has to, we need more of those. Then once we get to a mature, a good level, and they're mature Tregs, their needs are totally different. It's just like anything else. An infant's needs are different than an adult.
Sure.
So you're using that, and you have to modify it based on this. And the physicians don't, that's not in their toolbox. It's not that they don't even want to go into that toolbox. They have one, their toolbox is, I stay here. I'm going to affect the cause of it. I'm going to affect the effects of this, the consequences.
Yeah. Yep. So is healing through nutrition a quick fix, or does it require consistency and a lifestyle change? Because people would look at this and be like, okay, well, he said this, but this is the question that they wouldn't ask themselves. This is something that they would assume.
Yeah, I mean, like anything else, it's a process. And just like, but the way that we have it set up with this is that process. The really nice thing about this is that when you start, you can notice results right away. And as long as people are noticing results, like they're improving, they're moving in the right direction. Now it's like, okay, I'm in. My inflammation is down. My energy is up. I'm feeling good. I'm in. And, it's not it may not be that quick fix it. It's like an injection that's you're going to get an injection that's going to, wipe out interleukin 17 or interleukin 23 or something like that. It's not like that. But I'll tell you with this, you can even look at those various cytokines, which is these inflammatory markers, and you can see like the inflammatory marker interleukin 6, IL-6, will go down, and IL-10, which is a good cytokine, that'll rise. So you'll see that, and that's what you want. You want to see that difference of that, and that's what a lot of it is. It's your various ratios that are going to get that you want to improve and go more towards normal, more towards the way that the body is designed to be, and to optimize that. And that's what we're about. We're about optimizing immune regulation. When you optimize immune regulation, you are the miracle at that point, because your body does these miraculous things. It can heal. It's self-healing. You have to always remember, and healing occurs from the inside out, not from the outside in. It's not a pill that heals.
Yes.
It's your body that heals. And and when you set that up, that is a completely, when you're looking at the cause of something versus the consequence. And like I said, there are two different toolboxes. The medical establishment, they're not in this toolbox. They're into the critical care, life-saving. Will take you have a flare. They're great for that. We'll give you some things to try to settle that down. But while that's happening, not one of those, you could be on, Benlysta, or you're on, Enbrel, whatever it is that you're on, none of those address FOXP3, period. And so, you're taking hydroxychloroquine. Again, you're suppressing, but you're not addressing FOXP3. And that's the difference. And that's why I say you can do all that. You can try to settle that down and do what you're, and I work with the medical profession. I'll send them, someone's a patient. We immediately send out a letter to your doctor. We say, this is what we're doing. And we let them know that, hey, you're in control of doing your whatever medications and whatever tests you're running, whatever care you're doing. But what we're going to do is we're going to support FOXP3, and the Nobel, it has a Nobel Prize that says that, hey, this needs to be supported.
For sure, for sure. So we're going to move on to some lupus specific questions, right? What are some of the biggest misconceptions about lupus that you have heard or experienced?
I would say, and I think that people have, I think the biggest misconception is that, like I said, that it's a lifelong, that you don't have any choice, that that you're just going to manage it for the rest of your life, that you're not going to be able to, there's nothing, basically it's almost like there's nothing that can be done. And that's just not true. It's just not true. There's always something that you can do.
Okay. We're going to move on to patient success stories. Without violating any privacy, can you share a patient story that was deeply impacted by you?
Well, I would say, the one I go back to, and I go to Maria, because it's the one that changed everything. She sent her sister in. Her sister lived in Maryland, and came up to see me. She sent others in. It was to see someone in tears of joy because of the fact that, the swelling's down, the inflammation's down, the rash is gone, her energy's back, and she has her life back. It's like where was this person? It's like that, and the person that's there, a lot of times when people come in, it's like They know it. They'll say, "This isn't me. This isn't who I am." Like they know deep down, that this isn't me. Like I'm in there somewhere, and that is so true. And that just made a profound impact from that time, and it has continued, and it just drives me because of the fact that I knew at that time, like I said, I knew that there was something going on. I just didn't know at that time that it was FOXP3. I didn't realize the regulatory T cells. And then but I knew that what I did had a dramatic effect. And so from that, I'm just so thankful because I just started investigating. And as soon as I saw it at the time, and that's how I am. I'm like, we're going to find out what's causing it. We're going to find out how we can improve this and continue that process. And that led me to, so the instant that I heard FOXP3, like it was like this. I heard FOXP3. I knew what was up because I had already been investigating. I was like, what? I'm like this close. I'm this close to know because I have it, but why isn't it sustaining? Because we weren't focused on maintaining FOXP3. We didn't
Beautiful.
understand it, and as soon as we did, it was that changed everything. And then we changed. So a lot of stuff stayed the same. What we were doing, even from that, from some of the processes we did in the initial portion of the weight loss, it caused all this. When they got the dramatic change, but now we were able to fine tune that to make it so much different, and then change, develop a line of products that instead of using what we were using as it was, it's kept some things, but added stuff and said, like, what do we need to do? And then looking at those, all the pathways, seeing the commonality on when patients come in, and then knowing that, hey, we need to affect those pathways that are going to get us the best results, so that these 14 pathways affect FOXP3. And then in this person, what is the most likely pathways that are affected, and what are we going to do to help that? And that's how we developed what we developed.
I'm glad you led with that. So that's leading us right into empowering the audience. So let's empower the audience, right? So if someone feels hopeless after years of chronic illness, what would you want them to hear today?
I want you to hear that there is something that you can do, that there is hope out there, that your body is robust. It is a miracle. It's amazing. And that you can do, there are things that you can personally do, not rely on that take a medication for a hope for a medication to come in 10, 15 years like they're talking about. You don't have to hope for that. You can make a change. There are things that you can do right now, and you're in control of those. And some of those are, and that's what our program does. And we take you through that, whether it be a nutritional supplement, whether it be a food timing, and there's so many different aspects of that. We have, even within the program, there's different tiers within the program based on certain factors of your body, and then we take you through that. And when you do that, and the nice thing about it is, one of the first things that happen is inflammation goes down pretty dramatic, and you can measure that. Like a CRP. With lupus, you might measure like C3, C4. Anti dsDNA isn't going to be quite as good on that, but there's things that there's definitely things that you can measure. And we go through that with you, and you can measure, but you won't even have to. It's your own measurement. Your body tells you, like, you start and you just notice it. I'm coming back. This is me. And people say it's interesting how many times you hear that it's the first time I've been able to do something, whether it be playing with their kids or just being able to enjoy, just not having to worry about something, just having the energy to go all day long without getting tired. Like it's the little things, not having being able to not have a flare, not have, you hear people that have gone through, steroid bursts and one biologic, then another biologic, and you're able to do something fairly, that's very simple, that you are in control and you can change your life. How empowering is that you have that power, because your
Very.
body has the power to heal. And I want everybody to understand that you have the power to heal. In fact, it's the only thing. It's the pills don't heal. I try to tell people that all the time. And I said, even like, people say, what about an antibiotic? I said, especially like an antibiotic, you have an infection, you have a cut that's causing, it's new cells that heal. It's your body immune defense system that's able to take care of that. And that's what heals. And that's the most powerful thing. If even a broken bone, you set the bone, but the body then heals it. It wasn't a cast that healed it. And that's the power of the body. And that same power is in your immune system, that you can regain control. And I want everybody to understand that. I tell people, if you have a condition and it's affecting your kidneys, for instance,
Mhm.
the problem it's not a kidney disease. On this case, it is a regulatory, it's a regulatory challenge. It's an immune regulatory dysfunction. That's what's happening. And when you regain control, then it can take care of the problem. It can take care of that challenge.
I love what you said. I love what you said. If you could change one thing about healthcare approaches autoimmune disease, what would it be?
Well, it would be to look at everything from the aspect of cause,
From the
that you have to do that.
start from the root, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The root. You go from the root. Otherwise you're playing, whack-a-mole. And if it was just the medication, you'd have one medication. It would be like, oh, take this, and everybody would be good. And that's just, and that's not the way it is. And why the medications keep on changing? You got a new one coming out, then a new one. And you'll hear how great this one is, and then that one's not that good. Now you have to have the new one that comes up, because it didn't work as well as it should have. And the reality of it is, when the body's functioning properly, you don't need any medication. And I'm not saying that people go off the medication. Like I said, whatever you're on, you stay on. And there might be, you may have so much damage that already occurred that you may have to have some support. But no matter what, you need to support what's controlling all of this. And because a regulated immune system is always going to function better than one that's chaotic and dysregulated. Period.
So I don't know how many shows you watch the minds, but I like to do a rapid fire question, right? It's just this game to just um close out the show. So
Okay.
rapid fire questions, you got to answer them really, really fast.
Uh-oh. Okay.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so it's all pertaining to you. Coffee or tea?
Tea.
What is your morning routine over your evening routine?
Oh, I stay up late at night, and in the morning, I typically don't eat a breakfast, which is unusual for a lot of people.
Favorite healthy meal?
Oh, favorite healthy meal.
You gotta
Oh
think
man, I
fast. You gotta think fast.
grass-fed steak.
One book everyone should read.
Oh, oh. Uh, I have to go with the Bible on that. I'm not.
Okay. What's one myth about autoimmune disease you wish would disappear forever?
That it's overstimulation. That
Yep.
it has to leave.
One word that describes hope.
Oh, have faith. Um, hope is. I'm not sure what I would tell you on that one. I can tell you this: you you have the opportunity to heal. Period.
That's it. That's it. Thank you so much for participating in our game that we like to play on this platform. Okay. So with closing out, where can people learn about your work?
I appreciate anyone that's listening. Go to Dr. Ray Wellness .com, DRRAY wellness.com. And you can even go to, there's conditions on there. If you have a health condition, you can go in there. We have webinars, we have little trainings. There's all kinds of information for you, and you can actually schedule a consultation with me. And if you use the code Lupus 39, you get a $39 you can get a consultation with me. It's usually much more than that.
Tom, can you please put that in the chat so people can refer back to what he said? What projects are you currently working on that you are excited about?
Oh, I'm excited about a really big project. I'm working to make this accessible for other healthcare practitioners. We do a training, we do a certification program for health practitioners, but we're making a web app and a patient app that puts all this together. That using a lot of technology can look at the various pathways, come up with from diet to nutritional protocols to the nutrients that you need to the dosage, and that's it really tunes this in. And we already have what's called food pharmacy intelligence that we use right now, but we're going to even automate the whole thing specifically for autoimmune to just really make it better than ever.
Okay. And last question of the night. Finally, what message would you like to leave every lupus warrior and caregiver listening today?
Let's hope that you can overcome. And I would say, you know what? I'll take that as for hope. I go with overcome, because you can overcome. You can overcome these challenges, and even if it's not like, it may not be 100% because you have some damage that's already occurred, you can. Your body has the ability to heal. Remember this: your body is constantly making new cells. You get to choose whether that cell is going to be healthier, that's regeneration, or if it's going to be less healthy, that's degeneration. So you don't stay the same. And that's the one thing that I want to leave everybody with, is that if you don't do anything, it is not a neutral field. It doesn't stay there. It gets worse. It degenerates because it's under attack. So your antibodies, as long as you have antibodies there, those antibodies are attacking you. So you need to stop that as much as you can. And once you do that, that's really where it changes. So like I said, a lot of people don't realize, like, a heart cell average life expectancy, for instance, is like 94 days. So every 94 days, you're basically getting a new heart. So if those cells are healthier, that's a regenerated health. If it's less healthy, it's a degenerated health heart. And depending on what you do, depends on what speed that goes in. Some people are degenerating really fast, and other people are going slowly, and some people are regenerating. That's what you have to realize, and that is under your control to a large extent by what you do, by your lifestyle, and you can modify that lifestyle to tremendously affect that. And when you have that, and remember, you are empowered. When you understand that, that gives you power, because you have the power to heal yourself. And it's not that, it's your body. That power is inside you. There's nothing outside your body as powerful as the power that God put inside your body.
I want to thank you so much for taking out time out your busy schedule, for coming on to this platform, for educating people. And like we always say, knowledge is power. What you don't know is what
It
you
is.
know. And to remember that you always have a choice. If you don't do nothing, you do nothing right. And if you continue on with the same routine that you already have to sustain your illness, and you're still not living the quality of life, you got to ask yourself, why not try this? What would I lose? Right? So remember,
Absolutely.
always a choice, and you have to make the right decision for you. We are here at any given time. The information is in the comments, so if you are interested, and no pressure, if you guys are interested in this, just book a consultation. It would not hurt to get more educated than what you are getting tonight. So thank you so much again for your expertise, for coming on. We are live every Wednesday at 7 p.m. If you have missed this show or came in the middle of the show, please go to Lupus Has No Face podcast. And while you're there, like, share, and subscribe. Dr. Ray, please do not leave us. You guys have a good one.